Greetings, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland. Here I am in Chelsea, London. Behind me is the house where Earl Jellicoe lived the last few years of his life. I'm not sure if he died here in Blacklands Terrace. He died in Kensington. This is Chelsea, so close enough. There's now the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. They're amalgamated. So, a fine house, I think you'll agree. I'll try and put this selfie stick out to the maximum extent. You can see what I'm talking about. I think you could find room for yourself in there. So, John Jellicoe, as he was born, entered this world in 1859 in Southampton. That's a city on the southern coast of the United Kingdom, and his father was in the merchant navy, as in not the military navy. So it was in the blood, salt water, and they've been comfortably middle class for a few generations, merchants and surgeons and whatnot in their background. So far as I can tell, he was plain English through and through. Anyway, he went to HMS Britannia when he was 13. So boys in their early teens could train to be Royal Naval officers, and it was a very strict regime. Always had to learn English and maths and how to navigate and tie knots. Plenty of athletics, and there was a stringent discipline about how they folded their clothes, putting their hat dead center, and they could be caned for the slightest offense. So not a lot of fun, and absolute martinets in charge of them. Muscular Christianity, and only a little bit of morally improving literature. Not too much fun or imagination. But anyway, he passed through that, and often there were boys who were like lower middle class. If you're really working class, you wouldn't get into it because, well, partly snobbery. You had to be fairly well schooled. Working class children, the schools they went to would have huge classes. It would be difficult to learn very much. I don't think the working class were officially banned from doing it. I'm just not aware of any working class people who managed to enter one of these Royal Naval colleges in their early teens. But you're from precariously middle class family. It's a good way to be solidly middle class. You're never going to be rich as a naval officer, but you wouldn't be poor. You'd be looked after. So long as you kept your nose clean, you had a job for life with a pension to look forward to. Anyway, so he distinguished himself, and he entered the Royal Navy properly. He was commissioned when he was 18, and it was the days of steam were not quite over. Steamships are being phased out, as are wooden ships. Ironclads have been coming in since the 1860s. Obviously, by the end of his career, it had all gone that way. There were still coal-fired engines. Oil-fired engines were being brought in before the First World War. There are pros and cons for both. You know, the UK had access to more coal than oil, but coal took up too much space, and would you have to refuel too often? Yada yada. Maybe they should have done a blend of the two. Some ships coal, some ships oil. You can have both on a ship. Shows what I know. I know bugger all about maritime affairs. Anyway, he'd fought in the Boxer Rebellion and against Egypt and things like that. Got married at Holy Trinity Church, Sloane Square, which is more or less around the corner. You can't quite see it, but you'd go up this way. It's a ghost town, yeah? Deserted. Why a veritable ghost town? Well, because of the coronavirus thing. I don't know why the fire brigade's down there. Anyway, he was blessed with half a dozen children, one of them male, so the family name carried on. And that's why there's an Earl Jellicoe to this day. His grandson was involved in a scandal with hookers in the 70s, supposedly a security leak. Unknown to himself, his romps were secretly filmed, and he was disgraced. He could have been blackmailed. But anyway, back to Earl Jellicoe. So the First World War came along, and the First Lord of the Admiralty, i.e. the politician in charge of the Navy, was Winston Churchill. And as soon as the war broke out, Winston Churchill sacked George Callaghan. No, not me. My namesake, who was dismissed. But he doesn't seem to be an Irish, George Callaghan. He must have been, a bit, at least, the Admiral. Anyhow, and Jellicoe was appointed in his place in charge of the Grand Fleet, as in guarding the British Isles. And so the people thought there'd be an almighty naval showdown between the United Kingdom and Germany. They were a bit disappointed. A few naval clashes, the Battle of Heligoland Bight, and a few minor ones in the North Sea, or the Battle of the Coronel, and the Germans getting the better of it. This was very worrisome. As Churchill said, he's the only man who could lose the war in the afternoon. Not because he was of poor competence, but because if he got it wrong, if most of the Royal Navy was sent to Davy Jones's locker, it would have been game over for the United Kingdom. The Germans could effectively have interdicted Royal Navy shipping men and munitions to France or anywhere else cut off food supplies even more effectively. The Germans had U-boats, had fewer submarines than the British did at the outbreak of the war, so the Germans made a big mistake. They should have said, forget surface ships, we don't need many, and we'll put all that manpower, all that money, all the natural resources of metal and so on into submarines. They would have won quite quickly. And some people credit him with helping to defeat the U-boats. Others say no, the battle of the Atlantic wasn't really won by him. It was other men took the crucial decisions. So his idea was to play a waiting game. He had to be very circumspect, released some men to go and fight the Royal Naval Brigade on land. There was a battle of the Dardanelles that put paid to Churchill's career. He was not an admirer of Churchill, thought Churchill was a hothead in favour of rash operations, where he was rather circumspect. And Fisher, an admiral with whom Jellicoe got along, said, well, thank you for helping bring down Churchill, who was an absolute calamity for the Royal Navy, trying to force the Straits at March 1915, and 5 major warships blown up by Turkish mines before the operation was abandoned. And obviously then there was Gallipoli a month later, which wasn't exactly rip-roaring success either. So then there was really the crucial thing was that Battle of Jutland in May 1916. The Germans trying to tempt out elements of the British Grand Fleet from Scapa Flow, Rosyth and elsewhere. But it didn't work. There was a naval battle. Now, the Germans in a way got the better of it. They certainly killed more sailors than they had killed, inflicted more sinkings than they suffered. And the Royal Navy were closing in on them, so they escaped back to their harbour. But they weren't pursued too closely. Was that a mistake? Some people say he squandered a golden opportunity. He could have turned a retreat into a rout. Really just sunk so many German warships. But no, he said it was right to be cautious. They might be leading into some sort of trap, some sort of ambush, where they had laid mines or where they had U-boats that were as yet undetected. So he survived. He was left in possession of the field of the battle. The Germans did not achieve their objective. Both sides claimed victory, and that was that. And the German Navy was surrendered to them at the end. It was a rather inglorious blockade. I know, not dramatic, but in the long run, that probably strangled the Second Reich more than anything else. So he retired from the Royal Navy after the First World War, went out to be Governor General of New Zealand, the second ever person to hold that office. 1920-24, he was also a keen Freemason, was a Grand Master of the Freemasons in New Zealand, and then retired here to London, where he died in 1935, held in high regard by just about everyone who met him. That is Earl Jellicoe.